Hello, this is Jacqueline from Jack Knits, and today we're going to knit up this really fun, warm, chunky style hat using this really unique stitch here. I didn't even do a ribbing for this. I went right into the stitch to really showcase this beautiful, bulky stitch, and this just will make just a really warm hat. So let's take a look at how to do this. Okay, so to knit this hat, we are going to, again, just jump right into this stitch. I'm going to first show you how to knit this stitch, and then afterwards I will give you complete instructions on the construction of the hat and how to do all the decreases, etc. for the hat. But let's take a look at this stitch here. I used a bulky weight yarn for this. For this hat, it really doesn't take up a lot of yarn, so I'm just going to use some scrap bulky weight yarn that I have. I'm going to do a red and white one for this hat, and I am using a US size 10 needle, a circular needle, because I am going to knit this in the round. But if you do want to knit this flat, the stitch sequence and pattern is exactly the same as knitting it in the round. So if you prefer to knit things flat, go ahead and knit it flat and then just knit up a seam at the end. But if you're knitting in the round, you'll need a circular needle, and then eventually for the last few rounds of the hat, you will need some US size 10 double pointed needles as well. So let's start by casting on our stitches. For this hat, I am going to cast on 54 stitches. And I'm just going to use the regular long tail cast on method, but if you have a preferred cast on method you would like to use, feel free to do that. And if you need refreshers on how to do the long tail cast on, I will have a link in the upper right hand corner for that as well. But let's just use the long tail. I'm going to cast on 54 stitches, and then I'll come back and we will show how to do this fun stitch. Alright, I've casted on 54 stitches, so now let's begin with this stitch, and we'll begin with row number 1. Row number 1, and this is a 6 stitch repeat around the round or the row. And the round 1 starts with 3 knit stitches. 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to do a purl 1, a knit 1, and a purl 1. And that is our 6 stitch repeat. 3 stitches or 3 knit stitches, purl, knit, purl. So we'll continue with 3 knit, and then a purl, knit, and purl, and we'll do that all the way to the end of the round. And then don't forget to add a stitch marker. I forgot to do that at the beginning, but add that at the end of the round. Then we'll go on to row 2. Alright, after round 1 I added a stitch marker so I know the beginning and end of my rounds, and round 2 is very simple as well. We're just going to knit 3 and then purl 3. So that is our 6 stitch repeat for round 2, knitting 3 and purling 3, and we're going to do that to the end of the round, and then we're going to actually repeat these 2 rounds, rows 1 and 2, for 2 more times. So that will give you a total of 6 rounds total. So I will see you back at the end of 6 rounds. Alright, I'm just finishing up this round 6 with 3 purl stitches. And now we're going to start the second half of the pattern, which is rows 7 through 12. And you can see here at my finished hat here, these were the first 6 rounds, and the second 6 rounds are actually just like the first 6, but we're just alternating the order of the knit stitches and the purl stitches, so it gets kind of this alternating effect. So it's really very basic and similar to rows 1 through 6, it's just the reverse. So to start row 7, we are going to start with purling 1, knitting 1, purling 1, and then do the knit 3. So we're kind of offsetting what we just did in the previous 6 rows. So that is the next row. Purl, purl, knit, purl, and then knit 3. And we will do that all the way around. And this is row 7. Okay, round 8, as you could probably guess, is very similar to round 2, but in the reverse. So now we're going to start with 3 purl stitches, and then go to 3 knit stitches. So that will be the sequence for this next row: purl 3 and knit 3, and we'll do that till the end of this row. Then you will repeat rows 7 and 8 again 2 more times to finish up this first sequence, or this last sequence, to this 12 row repeat. So that is the basics of this very interesting, fun stitch. Now stick around and I will show you how we're going to switch colors, and then how we're going to do the decreases for the hat and complete this really fun project. All right, I've completed the 12 rounds for this first segment of the color. Now we're ready to switch to another color for the completion of this hat. So I have chosen just a white bulky weight yarn to switch colors to. So now we're going to repeat this section, the next 12 rows, with the alternate color B. Now I'm going to just join the new color here and begin knitting. And I'm going to start with row 1 again, which is starting with a knit 3, and then we go into that purl 1, knit 1, purl 1 sequence, and we're going to do that now with our alternating color. Now at this point too, you will want to make a decision whether or not you want to cut the first color and continue on just with the second color, and that means that you're going to have to do some weaving of ends each time you switch colors here, or if you want to carry this color up the rows by just making sure that it's tucked under your new color when you start a new round. So that's up to you. I don't mind weaving in the ends at the end, so I'm just going to cut my color A and continue now with color B for 12 more rows, and then you'll go back to color A for another 12 rows, and then with color B again we'll do some decreases. So I will knit up to this point and then we'll talk about the decrease rounds. All right, I've completed 3 full sections of those 12 row repeats with color A, B, and back to color A. Now we're ready to switch back to color B and finish this hat up with a few rounds of decrease. So I will have row by row instructions on how to exactly do the decrease rounds in the description below, but if you prefer to kind of work through this together, we'll go row by row through these decrease rounds. So I'm going to start by adding color B, and the very first row of our decrease rounds is actually just going to be the regular row 1 that's in the pattern. So that's going to be knitting 3 and then doing a purl 1, knit 1, and purl 1, and doing that 6-stitch sequence all the way through the end of the row. So let's do that row 1, and then the next row will actually be our very first decrease round. All right, now let's begin our very first decrease round, and we are going to do a decrease in this here in the second set of 3 stitches where we're doing the purling. We're going to do our decrease stitch in that purl sequence. So we're going to actually start with knitting 3, 1, 2, 3. Now when we were supposed to do 3 purl stitch, and now we're going to actually, the first 2 stitches we're going to purl together. So let's put our yarn in front, stick your needle in through both of those stitches and purl those 2 stitches together. And then we'll do just 1 purl. So now our 3 stitches in that purl stitch section now became 2. So we'll repeat that sequence to the end of this round as well, where we knit 3, then we're going to purl 2 together, then purl 1, and let's do that to the end of this round. All right, we're done with that decrease round. The next row, we're actually going to kind of go back to knitting within the pattern, but remembering now that we only have 2 purl stitches within those purl sequence stitches. So we're actually going to be knitting 3 and then just purling 2. So let's do that, kind of a non-decrease round, but a little off the pattern from our original pattern. Now we're knitting 3 and purling 2. So let's do that until the end of round 3. All right, now it's time for another decrease round, and for this time we're going to actually do a decrease in this little knit section of stitches. So for that we are going to start by knitting 2 together. So knit both of these stitches together. That will be a decrease stitch. Then knit 1 and then purl these 2. So we're kind of sticking with the pattern here, but we are doing a decrease stitch in these knit sequence. So let's knit these 2 together, knit 1 and purl 2, and we'll do that to the end of this round. Okay, now we're going to finish out this first 6 row repeat with 2 more rounds where we're not doing any decreasing, but we are just kind of following along in the pattern, which now has resulted in just knitting 2, purling 2. So we're going to do 2 rows of knit 2, purl 2. All right, we're ready for another decreased round, but we're also going to switch the orientation of these 2 stitches. So now we're going to start with a purl section and then do a knit section. So we're actually going to start with purl stitches, but we also want to do a decrease. So I'm going to start by purling these 2 together. So we're going to purl these 2, get 2 together. This is now going to be down to 1 purl stitch in between these sections, and then knit 2. So purl 2 together, and then knit 2. And we'll do that to the end of the row, and then we're going to be a little too few stitches on our needles to be comfortably on those round needles. So we're going to switch to DPNs after this round. Ending this decrease round with 2 knit stitches, and now you could see me kind of struggling with that last round. I've got too few stitches to really comfortably now fit on these circular needles. So now let's switch to our double pointed needles for our next decrease round. So let's remove the stitch marker since it's just going to fall off anyway. And now we can start to just knit off these circular needles onto our DPNs. And let's see, we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 27 stitches on these needles. So let's put about 9 stitches on each DPN. And let's begin our next row. It's going to be not a decrease row, so we're going to purl 1 and then knit 2. So kind of following this pattern from our previous row, but now we only have 1 purl stitch and 2 knit stitches. So let's start with a purl stitch, and then 2 knit stitches. And we're just going to put 9 on each of our 3 DPNs. Okay, so now I've got all my stitches on this DPNs. I can just remove my circular needle, do not need that anymore. So now our next round, we're now working with DPNs. Our next round is going to be another decrease round, and now we're going to do another decrease on those knit stitches. So we're going to start with a purl stitch, and then we're going to knit these 2 knit stitches together. Okay, so we'll do that around these DPNs, purl 1 and knit 2 together. All right, the next round is just going to be a regular round, no decreases this round, but now we only have a purl and a knit in our sequence, so we're going to just do purl 1, knit round all the way to the end of this round. And then we'll just have 1 more final decrease round after this. Okay, now all that is left is to do 1 more final decrease round, and for that we are just going to knit 2 together all the way around for our final row of knitting. So we should have 9 stitches left on our needle. So now we're just going to transfer those stitches to a darning needle, trim it off, and close up that gap. So let's give it a little trim here. Thread our tail onto a darning needle. And let's just now remove the stitches from our DPNs and thread them onto our darning needle. All right, just close up that gap with a nice little tug, and we'll insert our darning needle through the center and flip it over to the other side. And I like to just go through those final row of stitches one more time just to secure that hole a little bit. And now you can just weave in those ends, and we've got several ends to weave in here. We can do that later, but just to show you now the finished hat with the decreases, which kind of maintain the pattern a bit up on top. You can add a pom-pom if you've got a nice faux fur pom-pom to add, or make your own, or just leave it plain. I think it looks great either way. So I hope you found this helpful and you give this fun hat a try, or at least this fun new stitch, and come up with your own creative pattern with this stitch. So thanks for watching. If you liked, please give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Jack Knits, to receive notifications of new videos all about knitting tips and stitches and creative patterns like this hat. Thanks for watching, everyone. Happy knitting.